Well, it is wonderful to see everybody here this morning. I know it's probably a big disappointment when we found out that Aaron wasn't going to be here and it was going to be me instead, but we'll all survive, I hope. There are many things that I think, occupy my mind at different times, and of course, when it comes to the opportunity to worship together, of course, one of the biggest things I enjoy is singing. And the songs that we sing are wonderful opportunities of expression. And they are oftentimes supposed to be reflections of our thoughts, of what's going on in our hearts, in our minds. And we're expressing that musically to make it more emotional, to make it more appropriate in terms of the expression that we're trying to get across to God and to, of course, the others that are involved with it. And it's kind of ironic, of course, that there are songs that can address so many different aspects of what goes on. And so if I had to pick a song that reflects a little bit about the theme of my lesson this morning, there's a song that's I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. You think about so many of the things that are going on in society today, and that opening line just kind of, bam, that just jumps right out there, and you realize I'm one of those, I don't know how you term it, but I enjoy snippets of information that Facebook is wonderful for providing a broad, wide spectrum of what's going on in people's hearts and minds, and then also what's going on in their communities and things like that. And so, flipping through that times, you're going to see everything in terms of what all people are involved with and thinking about and those kind of things. And it's of course, I'm one of those. I like to think that I can take everything with a grain of salt, in that I don't believe everything that you see on the internet. I understand that was a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. It's an opportunity to see what's going on out there. And just for example, yesterday I just happened to be going through, and somebody had posted a live feed of a rally that was going on at the Weatherford courthouse, on the courthouse grounds there on that circle, and there was a big, I don't know how big, but you never know, you can't see the whole thing, but anyway, there's a rally going on, and don't really know exactly what all they were rallying for. This was just somebody's, got their little cell phone and they're taking pictures of what all was going on. And I saw one guy getting carted off. He had handcuffs on, and police were escorting him away from the square and things. So, something had gone wrong at some point. But those kind of things have a distinct flair for the dramatic, I guess you could say. And that people sometimes, kind of get excited, and they use that as motivation and things like that for their own expressions. And I'd like to take an opportunity to give us another outlook in terms of understanding this concept of the expressions of how we are to express ourselves as Christians. And so I want to focus primarily on one chapter, and that's in Hebrews chapter 12. And we're going to start off right off the bat, verse 1 there, in Hebrews chapter 12. says, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Now, there's a lot to be said for what's going on in the first part of this verse, but I really want us to focus on the latter half of this as we begin. It talks about lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Are any of y'all familiar with the horse racing concepts? When they run at the Kentucky Derby, do they just line up the horses with a random person on there and let them go? Oh no, there's a whole lot into it. They weigh those jockeys. And then depending on the weight of the jockeys and these other things, they actually put weights on the horses. The horses have weights added onto the saddle, and to try and make it a more evenly, balanced race in terms of what each one of the competitors, the horses, are having to deal with. And that's kind of what we see as we mentioned here. This is the thought that comes to my mind. We have things that can weigh us down. Some of you may have at some time in your life done some physical training where you put weights on purpose. You put on a weighted vest, or you put on the little ankle strap weights to go out and exercise. Or maybe you went walking and you carried the little hand weights and you're doing your little power walking thing there. And you added those. And what does that do? It increases the effort that you have to put out. And what he's saying here is that we as Christians, we need to lay aside those weights. Well, what weights is it he's talking about? Well, he's talking about the sin that so easily ensnares us. And so there are some things out there that can weigh us down. And we have to be careful about, how that happens to us. And so as we go on here, he says, let us run with endurance the race. Now, have any of y'all ever competed in one of those 5K, fun runs, as they call it? If you've ever been a part of that, the fun part's usually not the emphasis. Okay? It's in fact, I think a little misleading. Anyway, in that it is a run, and that word has a specific meaning. I think we can take an inference here. There's a difference between running and walking, isn't there? When you walk, how much effort does that take? Does it take more or less effort than running? Okay? And he emphasizes that even with the little phrase here. He says, let us run with endurance. This is one of the things that after, 35 years of coaching runners, particularly cross-country runners, if you've ever been to a cross-country race, you see this in every race at the junior high and high school level. Somebody, oh boy, they take off, I'm going to win this race, I'm out here, I'm doing great, and then here in a minute you see them and they're like, oh, and they're just walking. And they're going, I'm going to die. Somebody call the ambulance. And that tells you something. Number one, that they were prepared for what the task in front of them was. And number two, they were not mentally running with endurance. They were running for glory. They were running for fame. They were running for, they don't know. They just showed up because somebody told them they had to be there. And so he's telling us here, we're going to have to run with endurance. So we're not going to take the easy way. We can't jump on a horse and ride through this life. We can't get in the car and drive through this. We can't get on a plane and fly through it. We've got to get out there and run with endurance. It's going to be difficult. He's telling us. And what do we have to do? We have to run that race with endurance. So we've got to be ready to get after it and work at it and expect it to be difficult. And then fight through that difficulty. And so there's something to be said for that. Now, continuing that idea, if we look here, run with endurance the race that is set before us. Now, if you've ever been, again, to one of those 5K races, do you just go where you want to go and then come back and say, I win? No, you have a course, don't you? They lay out a course, and you have to, excuse me, you have to follow that course. And that's what Jesus has done. He has laid out the course for us. We have a prescribed path to follow. And so it's our responsibility to follow that path. You know, how many times do you see little kids out having some kind of contest and somebody takes a shortcut? And everybody goes, you cheated! That happens all the time. And that's kind of what can happen to us as well. There's always that little, you know, that old imagery of, you know, the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other, and, you know, and that little demon saying, take the shortcut, take the shortcut. Well, we have to be ready for that. We have to be able to handle that. We have to know that we have to follow the course if we want to receive the prize. And believe me or not, it's not just little kids that take shortcuts. There are people of all ages that are always giving in and taking that shortcut. And so we need to realize that we do have a prescribed path to follow. And then, of course, we know that Jesus is going to be there for us, and that we can look to Him and we can follow that example that He led, and we will be better for it. And so this is exactly, I think, something that He's trying to do. This is, in a way, not only a set of instructions, but also a little bit of an exhortation, an encouragement in the way that He is expressing Himself here. So this is important. Now, Hebrews chapter 12 is a little background. Of course, the follow-up to Hebrews chapter 11. And if you know Hebrews chapter 11, that's one of those huge chapters in terms of, you know, the famous quotes and things, because that's all those great men of faith. You know, where he's giving all these examples of all these great Old Testament characters and the great things that they did because of the great faith that they had. And then now he's got to have a follow-up to that. And that's what chapter 12 is right here. It's the follow-up to all those huge examples that he's given to the people here, of course, the Hebrews. Hebrews meaning the Jews that had their whole lives grown up with all of the stuff from the Old Testament. And so he's hitting right at what they know. And so he's going to give them this follow-up. In chapter 12 here has some great information that we can use as well, because we should know quite a bit about what's happened in the Old Testament. And so we're going to keep along the things. If we'll jump down to chapter 12, verse 11 now. He says here, now, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Now, in a lot of ways, a lot of big words, but what's he really saying here is, hey, what we have now is not pleasant, but what we have to look forward to is wonderful. And if we can make it through, if we can realize, the difficulties that seem almost like punishment, because he uses that word there, chastening. All right? Chastening to me always meant that my mom was wagging her finger at me. That's what I always associated that concept of chastening with, is that somebody was getting after me and wagging that finger right there up by my nose, telling me what I did wrong and I better get it right the next time. And that means that things are not pleasant at the time, and you could say it's punishment. It's oftentimes difficult to realize the difference between some things that are consequences and some things that are totally inadvertent. But we are dealing with difficult times, and we have to realize that. But again, as the old phrase goes, that fire hardens steel. All right, that metal is conditioned and becomes better because of the trials that it's put through, the hammering, the heating. All of those things make it better, and that's what we have as Christians as well. We become stronger the more times that we have to overcome difficulty. We will have this yield of the fruit of righteousness, and so we're going to need to expect that in a way. Now we jump down to verse 14. He says here, "Pursue peace with all people, and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord." Now, not to really try to step on any toes, but when we hear this phrase right here, pursue peace with all people. So what does that mean when you go out there and you put two flags in the back of your truck? One of them says, "Come and take it," and the other one is the Confederate stars and bars. Is that pursuing peace? That's not pursuing peace. Okay? Yes, you are expressing your thoughts, but you're doing it in a confrontational way. And I just feel that that's something that I need to say. I don't believe in all of that, if you want to use the word liberal stuff. I'm not a Democrat, I'll say that. But I'm also not going to be confrontational. I'm going to pursue peace. If someone comes up and got in my face and started hollering at me, I would stay calm. I would try and express with them to, let's sit down and talk about this reasonably. There's no need for the raised voice. There's no need for foul language. Let's see if we can't come to an understanding. That's the concept he's trying to get across here. We need to be careful about that in how we come across to people. We don't need to be confrontational about it. We can have our beliefs. You can be as conservative as you want to be, and they can be as progressive or liberal as they want to be, but you don't have to be confrontational about it. And that's something we need to be careful about. And so, like I said, I don't want to embarrass anybody or step on any toes, but I do think that we need to realize that that is what it's saying right here in the Scriptures, that he is expressing this. And so we need to be aware of that. And so the second part of that, he puts right there, and holiness. Okay? That holiness is important. He's put it in there specifically to say it's one thing just to be peaceable, but we also need to be doing that with holiness. With holiness basically means to set apart. We are to be above and beyond what the normal human response is. And that is based on the love of God. We do what we do with the love of God at the core of why we do it. And so we need to be careful, again, about our interactions with people. Whether it's on social media, whether it's at the coffee shop, or whether it's in our congregational assemblies. We have to remember that we have some certain responsibilities and expectations for what we are to say and do. If we drop down a couple more verses to verse 16. It says, "Lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright." I bring this up because I want you to see. He even gives an example here, using Esau as an example. He uses the term profane, which I think everybody's kind of familiar with, one of the forms, derivatives of that word, profanity. But the word itself, profane, means basically of the earth. All right? This is basically the exact opposite of holy. All right? And the reason why he brings this up, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of food. He let his worldly thoughts totally dominate his decision making. He let his simple, human needs overcome his spiritual needs and the spiritual aspect of his life, his future. He didn't see the big picture. In other words, he was so focused on right here, right now. And that's something that we have to be careful of. We need to remember there's so much more than what's right here, right now at stake. We have to look to what is beyond. We have to be able to see what's ahead. And use that as much as we can as our guide in our decision making. Is what is in our future. Well, of course, we hope it's a heavenly home. An eternity in heaven is the ultimate prize, the ultimate future that we could have. And so we need to keep that in mind as we make our decisions going through our daily life. It shouldn't be that knee-jerk human response. It should be something that's thoughtful and loving and godly and holy that drives us in our decision-making process. And so we need to keep that. And on the flip side of that, we've got to remember too that if you use this example of Esau, Esau came to his father later, as his father was getting ready to give him the blessing of his birthright. And Esau begged and cried. And, his father said, "I'm sorry. There's not anything we can do to get you fully restored." And in a way, that's kind of a scary thought. Is God going to be that way with us? Well, of course, we all know that God is a loving and forgiving God. He is merciful. He is abounding in love and grace. But there are some things that His hands may be tied in terms of, just like this father and Esau and his birthright and that blessing. We need to be careful about that. So again, we've got to keep that in mind, that we are always on the books, so to speak, and that God is watching, and God is aware, and God does have some expectations. Now, to kind of close things out, I've got one last verse that I want to address. In Proverbs, chapter 21, in verse 2. Now, a lot of people use a part of this verse. It says, every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs his heart. How many times have you heard somebody say, well, God knows what's really in my heart? You hear that a lot. And why do they say that? As an excuse for something that went wrong. Something didn't come out really well. And so somebody says, well, God knows what's really in my heart. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. We are going to stick our foot in our mouth. I'm surprised I don't have to spray athlete's foot spray in my mouth, because I've stuck my foot square in my mouth many times. And that's going to happen. And again, like I said, God knows what's really in our heart. But is that an excuse for us not trying to do what's right? That's what he's saying here. If God knows what's really in your heart, if you are trying to do it His way, that's where that first part of that verse comes in. Who's really thinking that they're doing it God's way? No, they're doing it that way. That's a mistake, because it's their own way. Every person thinks they are as smart as the next guy, or smarter, and that they can make good decisions and have great ideas. But again, where should that originate from? From the Lord. Our decisions, our actions should always be measured against what we know God would want us to do, and what God is going to know see in our hearts is His best interest, not our best interest. And so, as you go about these troublesome times, remember, just, that good old phrase, was that the 90s? The WWJD. What would Jesus do? Well, that's kind of the aspect here that we're talking about. You need to think before you act, and keep that peace as much as possible, and find a way through this. This is not going to be where, this country is not going to fall apart into chaos and martial law, and we're all going to need a cache of 5,000 rounds in our AR-15s, and martial law is the way it's going to be. It's not coming to that. We are intelligent. We have the opportunity to deal with this and move on. And so we have to take all those things into consideration as we go through. And I hope that, like I said earlier, that we will find a way to work through it. That we know that He is there for us, and we just have to wait for the future and then take those things. I know that there are many things that I've probably said that I may need to go spray my mouth with some tough-acting Tinactin to get them out, because I may have stuck my foot in my mouth. But I do feel that these are things that we need to address as we go through our time.